Hello, and welcome to Habits of Influence, a podcast for entrepreneurs by entrepreneurs, where we discuss the good, the bad, and the ugly side of entrepreneurship and building a movement where you become the person others wish to follow. Today, we have Bonnie Wagner Stafford with us, and she is the publisher and co-founder for Ingenium. I'm super excited to learn more about this. Bonnie, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much.
So just to get started, why don't you just jump right in? Tell us, because you told me the story before we started recording. Tell our audience real quick a little bit about Ingenium, how it came to fruition, and a little about what you do.
All right. I'm happy to. So the company is actually called Ingenium Books, and it has been around for about 7 years. We're a hybrid publisher of award-winning books. And by hybrid, that means we publish books under a couple of different models. We probably do about 2 books a year under a traditional publishing model, and then we do between 6 and 10 or 12 a year under what we call a hybrid model, where author and publisher share in the investment of the costs of developing the book and getting it to market, and then marketing the book afterwards. So that's why the hybrid. And we got into this business. There's a long story that I can share with you, but I'm a former journalist, so love storytelling. It's always been a part of what I do. But we left. We're Canadian, and our publishing company is Canadian. We work with authors from around the world, but we left Canada 8 years ago with myself and my husband, who's also my business partner. We had 4 suitcases, 2 cats, and a guitar, and we came down to Mexico, bought a sailboat, and we were looking for a way to feel like we were more connected with our authentic creative selves. My husband is a musician and a music producer and a composer, and I'm a writer and a journalist and all that kind of stuff. And we're both musical. Given that he's a musician, he'd have to be musical. But so we bought this. Yeah, we bought this sailboat, and we were looking for a name for our new sailboat, and we stumbled across the Latin word for creative mind, creative thinking, and that word is ingenium. Now, we started our publishing company about a year after we were living on the boat, and it just was too perfect. It was so the boat name came first, Ingenium, as our sailing vessel, and then that is now the name of our publishing company.
Which is awesome. What a great story too. I love the way you came across the name and the way you came up with it, and then it just ties right into what you both do. If you're, he's in music, you're in writing, and you're both tapping into that creative space. And now,
exactly.
Just to throw a little bit. I mean, can you now use that boat as a tax write-off because it's theoretically it's tied to the business now, right?
Well, it was. We just sold it. I know. The business got too big. We got too busy. We were never enjoying it anymore. So we figured it was time for somebody else to give her some love.
That happens. So how did you get to the point where you decided to start a publishing company? And I mean, obviously, because I looked up, you've done ghostwriting for other people. You decided to turn that into some stuff. And what made you just to start a publishing company?
Yeah, great question. So it kind of is, there was a natural evolution. So my editing and ghostwriting was really what we were doing to fund the rest of our, the rest of the life that we were having down here. We were looking for something that allowed us to be geographically mobile, digital nomad. So that was something that we could do from anywhere. And what happened was the more authors I ghost wrote nonfiction books for, they would go on to, and these, in my opinion, of course, these were very solid manuscripts. They had, it was a good story. It was the author's voice. They had a message and a desire to bring meaningful change to their readers, and I watched them go on to have challenging and disappointing experiences through their own self-publishing route. And so we first started helping. So we started with the writing of the books, and then it's like, oh, well, we can help those authors with, this step. And then we, each step that we added into our kind of bundle of things that we did, we had the same experience of seeing authors be either disappointed or unable or in some way, shape, or form disillusioned with the next thing in the process. So we just kept doing more and more and more things, and then we just turned into a full-fledged publisher. We no longer are we do not do fee for service elements at all anymore. I will do the odd author coaching stint, but we're full-fledged publisher now.
And prior to publishing, what did you do before that?
We had a long series of things. So I was mentioning before we came on, I'm kind of old, so I've been around the block a few times. And so I'm a former journalist, did about 15 years of that. Then I spent 15 years working in government communications in a senior management role. And my husband, on a parallel track, owned his own music studios and, was independent. He used to do film soundtracks and stuff, always, running his own business in working for clients, large studio clients, that sort of thing. And then we came together with this plan that we thought we would find a way to live somewhere warmer half the year from Canada. And so we went together into a business that was seasonal. So we left our corporate jobs and we're like, okay, let's, do this thing. Left our corporate jobs, got involved with this company, and where I was telling you that where we built out the franchise system. And it was in the home renovation space. And so we did that for a few years. And then there was a major product failure that we couldn't survive. So and that was kind of the point where we were like, oh, now what do we do? Here we are. I guess we can go full time, never mind 6 months of the year. So that's when we left Canada.
Gotcha. And then,
so that was a really good business experience, however painful. And the lessons that we learned in it, through that experience, continue to pay dividends today. Lots of things we learned what not to do. Lots of things we learned about realizing that there's an element of risk that is inherent. When you are an entrepreneur and you are in business for yourself, there is always an element of risk. You never know exactly what is beyond your control, and you can try to be as prepared as possible. But sometimes the universe hands you cards you didn't realize you were being dealt.
I'm going to dig a little deeper, okay? Because one of the things that we love on this is to get out the dirty, the stuff that nobody talks about, the trials and tribulations. So many people talk about all the great stuff and all the success and all the this and that, but we like to talk about the dirty stuff, the stuff that nobody talks about, the pain points, the real, as an entrepreneur, the stuff that we face. So would you be willing to share maybe one or two of those stories or lessons, or what was the smack in the face so hard that made you say, oh boy, we better shift gears?
Well, we ran out of money. That was the biggest slap in the face. It was like, oh, like there was the product failure required customers had to have their product replaced. And the company was small enough that the company couldn't absorb the manufacturing costs for the new shipment of it. We're talking, container loads across the ocean of product. So we had a lot of trouble absorbing the cost of replacing the failed product for some customers who had this particular product. So we almost could not have been properly prepared in that event. We took a leap that this was going to work, and for us it didn't. And the lessons were, I would say that the most lasting lesson for me was not so much an entrepreneurial lesson in, the nuts and bolts of your financial savviness, but it was around how to process emotionally what we went through. We spent, I will speak for myself. I can't ascribe these feelings to my business partner. I felt embarrassed and ashamed that this, because when I left my corporate job, people are like, what? You're doing this crazy thing. You're giving up your pension. You're giving up this cushy, of course I couldn't stand it. Sunday nights, I was one of those people. I was almost sick to my stomach thinking about having to go to the office the next day. Like I really needed something else. I really needed something else. But so to then turn around 3 years later to say to those people who said, what, you're crazy for leaving that cushy job, and say, yeah, well, we failed, we're out, was really hard. But so the lesson in there was, it took a little while for that to settle down, and I'm not really embarrassed about it anymore. In many ways, I wish it didn't happen. It was very challenging, but we were okay. We ended up okay. I mean, we're in Mexico with a publishing company called Ingenium Books, for heaven's sake. So there was that. And I think, there were other smaller little things like, should we have, developed deeper contingency plans? Should we have had a longer product testing runway? Should we have had clauses in the agreement with the manufacturer that had them in some way, shape, or I mean, not that we can necessarily blame the manufacturer either. It was, there's all kinds of, everybody was pointing fingers at everybody else. So all those kinds of things we reviewed and we looked at, and it's like, okay, maybe if we had done that and that and that and that, maybe things would have changed. But things happen for a reason, and I guess that's the other thing. This really does feel, where we are and what we're doing, this really feels like this is what it was supposed to be. We could not have gone from the corporate job straight here. We could not have. The road didn't go that way. We had to go through that middle place.
So what I'm hearing is, I mean, yes, there was a lot of loss and a lot of struggle and trials and tribulation and the emotional aspect that goes with that. However, the flip side is there was a lot of really good learning lessons.
Exactly.
And if you were to do something similar again, you would now have systems and certain checks and balances in place so that you weren't repeating that same mistake, or you didn't go through the same road, which I think is, that alone is a success, right?
Yes. And for example, we have zero debt in our company today. We have zero debt. We are operating with the revenue that we bring in, and we're very, very conscious of our margins, and so that experience, 10, 11 years ago, however long that was, is feeding into what we're doing today.
Which is absolutely amazing. And how many people do you have on your staff?
Well, we don't have staff. We have a team of anywhere between 10 and 15. Some we have that work with us on a regular basis, as in we have, our agreement is that there's this amount of money that we pay you every month. You're going to do this and that thing. And they've been with us for several years. And other people, it's like, okay, we need you for 12 hours this month, and we're not going to need you again for another 3 months. So that's the other thing, is that we've structured our company to be more nimble, and to be able to respond when we have more books in the pipeline and we need more hands on deck. We are able to scale up, and when we don't need them, we are able to come back down to, and that's kind of how we're able to stay operating in the black.
Excellent. And I think you touched on a couple little really key points of, the learning curve, the learning mistakes, the lessons, so to say. And I think as a result of that, like you said, now you're doing so much better. And without those
Yes.
lessons, we couldn't have gotten there. And I think
Exactly.
that's one of those things that so many people go into business and they do focus straight on, oh, what are the numbers? What's the profit and loss? What's my ROI? They don't look at other things out loud, like what you said, like, how could I safeguard, prevent an issue from happening? And I know one of the things I shared on a previous interview was when I got into business, I thought I knew it all. I'm like, I'm going to run this way. I want to run it. I'm going to make up my
Yeah.
own rules. I'm going to do this. And I think so many of us get into that aspect of entrepreneurship is we think we know it all and we really don't. And being
Yeah.
open to learning and, I'm going to use your words. This is not my words, you being older and around the block, like you probably have a lot of experience that some people may not have. So being able to reach out to somebody like you that has experience, is that there's just so much, and it's just invaluable. You can't,
Yeah.
that's something that if I was to do it over, I would have started with coaching years ago, like just years, I,
Right.
I wouldn't have waited. I would have gotten somebody right away. And I think there's always that balancing act of, well, we're just starting out, so we don't have a lot of money to invest in coaching or programs or this. But when you don't, in the long run, you're spending more time, more resources, more whatever, trying to learn those things. Where if you just did it right from the beginning, you could have avoided a lot of those pain points, right?
Yeah. Right. And then there's something about being an entrepreneur and being in business for yourself that some of those trial and error things, I think it's okay not to do it perfectly the first time. It's how innovation happens. It's yes, it can be painful and sometimes the results are disastrous, but I think it's a price collectively as entrepreneurs we I think need to be comfortable with, because that's the purpose we fulfill in society.
Yeah. We learn and grow through mistakes and failures.
Exactly.
And
Exactly.
we learn how to overcome them. We learn how to troubleshoot. There's so much growth that happens. And I hate to say it, especially here. I mean, we learn from pain. Pain is a
That's true.
catalyst for change.
Yes.
And as much as nobody likes to go through it or experience it, we all have those pain points that we just say, I really don't ever want to go through this again. How can I avoid it? Or, wow, this does not feel good. How do I get out of where I'm at?
Yeah.
Sometimes it takes a little while and sometimes we stay stuck. And sometimes we say, okay, it's time. Let's go.
That's exactly right. Yeah. Exactly right.
So what would you say as an entrepreneur, as a publisher, as somebody who is a co-founder of a publishing company, what would you say if you were to give any piece of advice or recommendation for listeners? Let's say if they're just starting out their business, or maybe they want to maybe they want to publish a book, or maybe they want to do something similar. Do you have any solid key points you would like to share with them to say, these are things I would either do, these are things I would stay away from, anything like that?
Well, for entrepreneurs in general, somebody who's maybe starting out and looking to start their own business, or even starting being a freelancer, I would say one of the most valuable lessons is to trust your gut. So that is something that took me decades. I was stuck up here in my head. I had to intellectually process everything, which meant I was going around in circles and looking at, well, what if this? And what if I do this? And what if I do that? And what if it had decision trees with like 47 different things, and I get stuck. There was so much detail that I was intellectually processing. I couldn't get anywhere. And finally, it was like, okay, back up. Yes, I can do all that thinking, but what is my instinct telling me? And I can get there faster and quicker and with a much greater degree of peace when I've connected with my instinct and I listen to my gut, and it gets me out of trouble. So that would be the biggest thing, is if you don't know where your instinct is, where your gut is, find it and then listen to it. That would be the biggest thing. And then the whole question about if you want to start a publishing company or write a book, oh my goodness, I don't think we have time for that today, but I'd be happy to talk with anybody at any time about that.
Yeah, I think it's really valuable, the trusting your intuition. I've noticed personally, anytime I go against my intuition or my gut instinct, it costs me some way or another, either
Right.
time, energy, resources, people,
Yeah,
something. Yeah,
absolutely.
just trusting anything. And you mentioned something earlier that I want to go back to because I think it's something that we overlook a lot in just life in general. And you talked about when you went through all, I'm going to use the word failure with the other business, and you had to go back and kind of like eat that humble pie with, telling your friends that, yeah, we failed or whatever. And you mentioned the word balancing the emotion, I think is what you said, or managing the emotion.
Hmm.
Um, I would love for you to talk a little bit more about that because that is something I think we overlook a lot is, we're expected to be, oh, you're this strong person, stay strong, be the entrepreneur, be a badass, be this, and we forget that we are still human. We do still have emotion. We do still have to process things. We do have to deal with stuff that doesn't flow the way we had hoped. So can you touch a little bit about that?
Yeah, happy to. I also spent decades of my life trying not to feel emotion too strongly. And so as a result, there were times when it took me longer to process an emotion out because I wasn't paying attention to it. I was like, no, no, I'm not going to look. No, I'm not going to. So I think, and again, it might, is it because of my age? Is it because of, my experiences, whatever it is. I'm happily at a place where I'm not afraid of the emotions anymore. And because you know what? They're transitory. They're only here for a little bit. They're going to pass. So it almost, and there's, I mean, traumatic grief is an example of one where, gee, we really don't want that to hang around very long, but there's nothing you can do about it when it is there. And when you're talking about the emotions associated with, for example, a business failure, they're going to pass too. And they're, which doesn't mean that it very specifically does not mean that you ignore it while you're going through it. That's not what I'm suggesting. I think the ignoring of the emotions or the denying or the suppressing gets us into trouble. So I would say, own it, be okay with it. What if I could go back and do things differently? There would be, friends and colleagues that I would change the kind of conversation I had with them about what I was going through. I would say, I'm really embarrassed, but this
Yeah.
is what happened. I'm really, I feel really ashamed about this. I'm really having a hard time processing how I could let this happen. Own it and be okay with it. And also knowing that, coming part and parcel with that emotion piece is what other people think is none of my business.
I've heard that a lot.
Right. And it's hard, but it's true. We cannot uh change, predict, influence, or anything else what anybody else is thinking about us. It really is none of our business. And I think, that was something at that time when I was struggling with that. I was very concerned with what other people were thinking.
And I think going back to something you said a moment ago, I always use like the storm analogy, right? The quickest way through a storm is through it. If you run from the storm, it's going to chase you. It's going to stay there.
Exactly.
You're literally prolonging the misery. So if
Yes.
there is something, even if you don't want to address it or it's, you don't want to deal with it, the best way is to go straight through it. Because if you don't, it's going to take longer. It's going to be more emotionally draining. It's going to be physically draining. And you were just literally beating yourself up at that point because you're refusing to accept responsibility or take the initiative to say, okay, this isn't right. What do we need to do to fix it? We can always
Yeah.
sweep things under the rug, but it's still under the rug. We still have to deal with it at some point, and then that pile just gets bigger and bigger. So go head
Yeah.
on, tackle it, go for it. Boom.
Go through
Um,
it one step at a time.
how you eat an elephant, right? One bite at a time. That's what they say.
Right. That's right.
I've
Exactly.
never had an elephant. I don't plan on having an elephant, but if I ever did, it would be one bite at a time. I
One
wouldn't
bite
try
at
to
a
kill the whole
time,
thing.
starting
So
with the toenail.
that I'll let you have the toenail.
Yeah.
Have at it.
Yeah.
Excellent. Anything else you'd like to share about your company, about your entrepreneurial journey? Anything that you want to share with the audience right now?
Well, I'm pretty proud of the work we do at Ingenium Books. I feel like I'm shamelessly tooting the horn, but I would love it for people to go and check out our website and check out some of our authors. We took our first book to the Wall Street Journal bestseller list last year. It was a book by
Congratulations.
thank you, Dr. Peter Silverstone, The Promise of Psychedelics. And we're in the middle of a campaign to take our second book to the Wall Street Journal bestseller list this coming spring. And we are publishing books that are winning awards, and so we'd like to think we're helping these authors change the world by sharing their authentic stories. We do some fiction, but the large percentage of books that we publish are nonfiction. But we've got some really, really, really great stories and some really powerful authors, and I would love it if people would check it out.
That's amazing. And while you're on that topic, how can they find you?
They can find us at ingeniumbooks.com. I guess I better spell it. INGENIUMBOOKS.com.
Perfect. And if people want to connect with you directly, is there a way they can contact you? Is it through the website? Do you have an email? Do you have a Facebook? Do you have anything else that you could direct people to?
Yeah, there is a contact form on the website, but I would be happy to have emails as well if people want to send a direct email. My address is Bonnie, which is a weird spelling, which doesn't help, but BONI at ingeniumbooks.com.
Excellent. And then any last minute tips if you had let's say, new potential author, somebody wants to start a book, what would you be any advice or recommendation for them? Or would you say, hey, give me a call and we can, point in the right direction?
No, I would actually. The where we always start is with a discussion of who the audience is. And in our experience, far too many people overlook thinking about the reader. And I say that in the singular form on purpose. I can't tell you how many conversations we've had with authors where there's like, no, my book is going to be for everybody, but it can't be. We are all individuals. We need to. So I would say at the very beginning is to really think carefully about what is the book that you're writing? Who are you writing it for? As in, who is the reader? What do they need? What do they want? And what do they expect from you? And from the book, and then do your best to deliver on that in whatever way that is.
Awesome. Thank you so much. We will make sure that all of your contact information is in the post when it does come out. We'll make sure you have copies of everything. For those of you listening, thanks for tuning in. We do have a new episode each and every Wednesday. They come out, and we'll make sure to get everything posted. If you haven't already done so, like, subscribe, click the little notification bell on YouTube. We are on YouTube, habitsofinfluence.com. For the website, we're on all major podcast streaming channels. And Bonnie, thank you so much for taking the time to interview with us. Pleasure having you here. Look forward to getting to know you better and following some of your success stories and some of your writers. And for those of you listening, we'll see you all next week. Thanks for tuning in.
Thanks very much.